These are dynasty rankings. Don't go and scream at me. Oh my gosh, Mason, I can't believe you have Michael Penix ranked ahead of Kirk Cousins. You're an idiot. I understand. Yes, this next year, maybe Kirk Cousins outscores Penix, but we are thinking long-term here, okay? Starting off tier 1, there's nothing to discuss. You have Mahomes, Allen, Stroud. I would take Allen over Mahomes if it was a redraft league. I think based off the fact that Allen just has an incredible amount of rushing upside, right? I mean, if you're looking at the short term here with Josh Allen, this is a quarterback that this past season goes out there and he has 15 rushing touchdowns. Let's look at this. Yes, this is a quarterback with 15 rushing touchdowns in 2023, 53 rushing touchdowns through his NFL career, and with 3,600 rushing yards through his NFL career. So in the short term, give me Josh Allen with his athletic profile. Give me Josh Allen with the fact that he can, yes, go out there and potentially lead the NFL in passing. But if we're talking dynasty, if we're talking long-term here, you're never going to go wrong with Mahomes. I don't know if Josh Allen's going to be 31 years old and he's going to be going out there and having double-digit rushing touchdowns. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm pretty much certain that Mahomes will be 31 years old and probably the best quarterback in the NFL. So I'm going to go Mahomes over Allen in Dynasty. Give me Allen over Mahomes in redraft. And then we're going to go CJ Stroud here at 3 as well. I mean, if you're looking at underdog drafts right now, I mean, CJ Stroud is a quarterback that's a borderline top 5 QB off the board. And at the same time, he's only going to year 2, right? So perfect definition of a cornerstone asset. All 3 of these quarterbacks you can contend with right now. And obviously, they all have a considerable amount of long-term value. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we are going to be looking at Joe Burrow at 4. Now, yes, I understand you're going to hate me for this Burrow ranking. Yes, I understand that this is very aggressive. And I would have Joe Burrow after these other quarterbacks if it was a redraft league. I mean, if you're looking at these underdog drafts just for 2024 right now, obviously you're going to have Jalen Hurts. Obviously, you're going to have Lamar ahead of him because Jalen Hurts and Lamar can go out there and crush Joe Burrow running the football. I mean, if Burrow is a QB that gets you, say, 250 rushing yards in a season, you're happy with that. But I'm going to be giving the edge to the quarterback that wins more so with pocket presence and his arm talent in Dynasty, and seeing that play transition over the long haul. I still think that Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are going to be super strong quarterback options in a few years from now. I just don't necessarily know if they're going to be the elite level QBs that they are today when their athleticism goes. Even if they are talented passers, a lot of Lamar's game's driven what he can do athletically. A lot of Jalen Hurts' game is driven with what he can do with his legs. So I'm a little bit more worried when it comes to the rushing quarterbacks, projecting them out in Dynasty, than I would be someone like Joe Burrow. Obviously, if it's a redraft league, you're not necessarily caring about the longevity concerns. If you're looking at a redraft format, hell, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are the QB2 and QB3s off the board in underdog drafts right now. And if you're going over to flockfantasy.com to pull up the community rankings, you'll see most people disagree with me. I mean, most people have Jalen Hurts as well as Lamar Jackson ahead of Joe Burrow here. And then our last quarterback in this tier is going to be Caleb Williams. If you're looking at Caleb, no, he's not going to be Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson rushing the football. I mean, obviously it'd be phenomenal if he was, but nonetheless, Caleb will still go out there and run. I mean, we saw that with double-digit rushing touchdowns at USC in college. And if you are looking at Caleb Williams, we've said it all offseason that this Chicago Bears situation is phenomenal. It is so much better than what typically a number 1 overall quarterback draft pick deals with. Yes, Fields disappointed over the past few years, but I think Caleb comes in. I think he's immediately a QB1 in underdog drafts right now. He's being drafted as the quarterback 11 for this season. And then obviously for Dynasty, you just get so much insulated value where even if Caleb Williams disappoints this next season, he's still going to be valued as like a top 24 guy in fantasy pretty much no matter what happens. I mean, go look at Bryce Young later in these rankings. Now, dropping down to our next tier, this is where things get difficult. I will be giving Justin Herbert the benefit of the doubt. Justin Herbert right now is the QB 17 in these underdog drafts, which I like him at that price. I will be drafting him at that price, but it kind of makes sense why he's going so low in 2024 drafts. You're looking at an offense that, based off the decisions that this coaching staff has made this offseason, it seems like they are going to want to run the ball over and over and over again. Instead of taking Malik Neighbors round 1, they go offensive lineman. I mean, they let Mike Williams go. They let Keenan Allen go. So I'm expecting this to be a rush first offense for the Los Angeles Chargers. I think the passing volume as well as the pace of play slows down dramatically in comparison to where it was in years past. And also, you don't really have that great of a supporting cast here. I mean, if we're going to go through and look at these underdog drafts and where these Chargers guys are getting drafted, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 39. Joshua Palmer, wide receiver 58. Quentin Johnson, wide receiver 67. So right now, I mean, the expectations for the passing volume in this offense is just horrendous for this next season. But we've seen Herbert be a phenomenal QB over a large sample. We know he's talented. We know he's going to have the longevity. So I'm still going to have him much higher in Dynasty than he would be in redraft. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to be looking at Anthony Richardson. With Richardson, I think he's probably a good quarterback, right? I can't come out here and say that he's like guaranteed to be some absolute stud like a lot of people want to point him out to be. He looked good in a very limited sample last year in these underdog drafts. He's currently being drafted as the QB 6. So you're probably thinking, well, Mason, how the hell is he being drafted higher in redraft than in Dynasty if he's a year 2 option? It's a fair question to ask here. My thought process ultimately is just, I don't know. We've only seen him in a limited sample. I think he does fall in the category guy, though, where he can be a bad real-life quarterback and is still an effective fantasy option just because he's going to have so many rushing yards and presumably rushing touchdowns. We're going to go Kyler at 10 with Kyler. Yes, the past few years have been disappointing with the injury, but now Kyler is fully healthy, and Kyler has Marvin Harrison Jr. In my mind, this is probably the best situation Kyler's been in his entire NFL career, and you're getting him at a significant discount in comparison to just a few years ago when Kyler was a round 1 startup pick with no Harrison on this team. And then our last guy in this tier is going to be Jordan Love. With Love, he looked phenomenal this last season, right? I mean, let's go ahead and let's pull up exactly how good Jordan Love was. And this is with just a random group of pass-catching options where you have Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, a couple tight ends. Really nobody that you're like super confident is a full-blown stud. Yet Jordan Love has 4,100 passing yards. Jordan Love also has 32 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Jordan Love, full-blown breakout, looks phenomenal. I'm not going to be ready to put him over Justin Herbert yet in Dynasty, though, just given the fact that we've seen the larger sample with Justin Herbert. We've seen the larger sample with Kyler Murray. And Anthony Richardson has more rushing upside. So I'm excited about Jordan Love, but it's very hard to put him in the tier of Burrow, Herbert, when we've seen Burrow and Herbert do it for years and years and years, and we've seen Jordan Love do it for 1 season. Now, our next quarterback I actually think is a great value both for Dynasty as well as best ball this year. You have Trevor Lawrence, QB 12. If you're looking at Lawrence, this was a quarterback that was a top 6 startup pick last year. Now you're going to be getting him at the 2-3 turn. We head over to flockfantasy.com where the community rankings, they're absolutely free. You can pull them up whenever you want, ladies and gentlemen. Trevor Lawrence is QB 12 there. He's currently sitting at 24 in the community rankings. So this is someone that you're getting at the end of round 2 or the beginning of round 3 in your startup draft. And if we look at what happened with Lawrence this past season, I mean, it was a night and day difference from the beginning to the end of the year. This is a quarterback that obviously ended his second year extremely strong 2 years ago. He started off 2023 looking great. And then what happens? He gets hurt, he plays through the injury, and he looks like a bum the second half of the season. Still, if we're looking at the past 2 years, this is a quarterback that has 46 passing touchdowns to about 22 interceptions. This is a quarterback that does have some rushing upside as well, even if he's not Lamar, even if he's not Jalen Hurts. He had 339 rushing yards this past season. And if you're looking at what the Jacksonville Jaguars have done this offseason, they bring in Brian Thomas Jr., they bring in Gabe Davis. I mean, this is a team that looks dedicated to go out there and air the ball out. So I'm in on Lawrence. I'm fine taking him at the end of round 2 in a startup. You go over to his underdog price. I mean, right now he is QB 15. You're getting him as a mid-round. I would love going in an underdog best ball tournament if you could grab like Lamar in round 4 and then follow it up with Trevor Lawrence later on and only take 2 quarterbacks. I think Lawrence is a great second piece to do just that. And of course, if you want to hop in and draft with us, ladies and gentlemen, I'm literally drafting every single day on the Flawed Fantasy YouTube channel. You can find the link to join our drafts over on Underdog Fantasy in the description, in the comment section of live chat. They're best ball drafts, so there's no time commitment at all during the year. It's how we draft hundreds of teams every offseason. So I won $150,000 on Underdog 2 years ago. And yeah, if you sign up with code FLOCK on Underdog, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $250 on all new accounts. Plus, you're going to be getting a special NBA pick'em, something like Luka Doncic more than less than half a total point. It's going to be whatever the big NBA game is the night that you're watching this. And also, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be getting our 2024 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. So make sure you take advantage of it. It's available in damn near every state, even available in Michigan now. Now, going over to our next QB, we're going to go with Jaden Daniels. If you're looking at Daniels, we'll compare him to the guy right after him in Brock Purdy. Obviously, Purdy has showed that he can be a successful NFL quarterback, and he is a good NFL QB. Whereas if we're going to go through and if we're going to look at what Jaden Daniels has showed, and Jaden Daniels has not showed anything, so I know it looks aggressive to put Daniels ahead of Purdy. It all just comes down to the rushing upside that Jaden Daniels has, plus the fact that he goes around, pick 2 overall in the NFL draft. He's guaranteed to have the job security over the next few years. Plus, this is someone that obviously has a ton of rushing upside. So I'm going to go right back to the well. This is what got us suckered into Trey Lance back in the day, which Lance will be in these rankings later on. But if you're telling me you have the job security based on NFL draft capital, which works out every single time, but in San Francisco, plus you have the rushing upside, it's going to be hard for me to get away from you. And if you're going to look at Jaden Daniels in comparison to Brock Purdy and where they're going in 2024 drafts, Jaden Daniels being drafted at pick 105 in Underdog drafts, and Brock Purdy's being drafted at pick 104. So, it's not like you're seeing redraft players say, oh, the veteran's going to be so much better this year either. The projections are about the same for them this year. We're going to go Drake May, Tua, Dak, all back-to-back-to-back here. Very difficult to talk too much about this group. Obviously, Drake May has job security given the capital, but he's a massive question mark. He could be very bad. He could be very good. We don't know. Tua and Dak, we have a very good idea who these guys are. These are quarterbacks that don't have a lot of rushing upside. They're going to air the ball out, though. There should be a ton of passing volume in their respective offenses. But also, they're more so assets that you're wanting on a contending team, right? If I'm a rebuilding roster, I don't know how excited I am to build around Dak Prescott. So I think this tier, it really comes down if you're a contending or a rebuilding squad. Going down to our next tier, I don't know what to do here. We have J.J. McCarthy and Jared Goff back-to-back. I think I am going to have to move Goff ahead of McCarthy if you look at the contract Jared Goff just got. Regardless of if I think Jared Goff is worth it or not, regardless of what I think about the Detroit Lions' decision to do this, this is a deal where he gets $212 million, which obviously the number at the very top is always a fake number. You don't want to be looking at that. NFL contracts aren't guaranteed. But what is not a fake number and what is very, very real, which you should be paying attention to, is the $171 million guaranteed for Jared Goff in Detroit. It's a team with a really strong offensive line. It's a team with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's a team with Jahmyr Gibbs. So, I don't know. I think we have to move Goff up to 18 over McCarthy. Where McCarthy, obviously, like him long-term with how good his situation is. But we kind of understand that we get a baseline floor with Goff. Or the baseline floor is not there with McCarthy. Then dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Bo Nix. I have no idea if Bo Nix is any good. It's not a good situation he's stepping into in Denver, but looks like he's going to get the starting job chance. If we're going to be comparing him to the next few QBs, Baker Mayfield, his contract does not look anything like Jared Goff's. Plus, his weapons in Tampa are going to be a lot older. If you look at Bryce Young versus Bo Nix, this is a good little comparison here. If you ask me how to rank these guys coming out of school, obviously I would have had Bryce Young well ahead of Bo Nix. I think everybody would. And you can make an argument that Bryce Young had a miserable rookie season based off his coaching staff, based off the weapons that they surrounded him with, and not anything to do with Bryce Young himself. But for a QB to come out and put up as miserable of a season of what we just saw from Bryce Young, we can't ignore it. We can't come out here and just act like it didn't happen. It happened. I think the situation can be better this next year, which is why, we went out and previously to start the offseason, we said Bryce Young, when we were looking at the community rankings on flockfantasy.com, was an interesting buy in comparison to like the 110, the 111, the 112. And now I kind of have to walk it back knowing how deep this rookie class is Or if you can get Bo Nix at the 110, I'd rather just hit the reset button because we don't know. I mean, Bo Nix may not have a miserable rookie year. And Will Levis will be our last guy here at 23. I'm really rooting for Levis, right? But the difference between Bryce Young and Will Levis is if Levis has a bad season this year, he's done. Like, he's not going to get another starting job shot. He was someone that got selected in round 2 of the NFL draft. Bryce Young could be yet again miserable this season, and they'll just go right back to the well, and they'll play Bryce Young as the starting quarterback again in 2025, which is why it always makes sense to go out there and invest into the quarterbacks that are selected inside the top, like 3 to 5 picks in the NFL draft, because they do have that kind of job security where even if they are bad, they're going to be starters. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Michael Penix at 24. And obviously, this is a very different type of quarterback if you're going to be comparing him to the rest of the players here. If you are a contender, is there any world in which you are taking Penix ahead of Stafford, Watson, Cousins? No. If you are a rebuilder, is there any world in which you are taking Cousins over Penix? No. So I think it's very much up to what you want here. Obviously, Cousins gets a decent contract, but for them to go out there and take a quarterback top 10, I don't want to say avoids it, but historically speaking, we went back to like the year 2000. We looked at over 20 years of data. And for a quarterback to go as high as Michael Penix just did in the NFL draft, more likely than not, he's going to get a shot to start in 2025. Dropping down to our next tier, this is like the gross range. We're going to have Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith. Really the only guys that would be interesting to talk about here are Daniel Jones. One, I will say, if you're an underdog draft right now, Daniel Jones, especially in like the underdog tournaments where it's like a $5 buy-in, $50,000 for first place, where we are just chasing upside, upside, upside. I actually really like the Daniel Jones draft pick. I think it's going to be not good from a real life perspective, but it may not necessarily matter if you are looking at him from a fantasy perspective where you saw the rushing upside 2 years ago. I actually got 16th place in Best Ball Mania with Daniel Jones 2 years ago. Daniel Jones cashed us in 10,000, which was nice. But now you get Malik Neighbors, and Daniel Jones can still be a bad real life quarterback and a good fantasy option because of that rushing upside. And I would say the same thing if we're looking at Justin Fields. I guess Justin Fields would be interesting to talk about. And we'll go down to the next tier too with Carr, Russ, Minshew, and Lance. So if I'm looking at, say, Justin Fields in comparison to Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson is more likely than not going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am not expecting Justin Fields to come out, start week 1. I'm honestly, if you had to ask me who has more games, who has more pass attempts, I think Russ is most likely the guy in Pittsburgh. But if I'm ranking who I want from a fantasy football perspective, I'm going to go with Justin Fields over Russell Wilson, even if, say, there's a 75% chance that Russell Wilson's the starter in Pittsburgh, a 25% chance that Justin Fields is. Because if we look at it through the light of fantasy football, if there's a 75% chance that Russell Wilson's the starter in Pittsburgh, how often can you start him? Cool, he wins the starting job. Is he in your starting lineup in fantasy? I don't know, probably not. Whereas if Justin Fields gets in there only 25% of the instances, like if we played this out 100 times, maybe 25 seasons, Fields is the starter here. I know that Justin Fields, we've seen it before, can be a very bad real-life quarterback while at the same time being someone that you want in fantasy based off rushing upside, rushing upside, rushing upside. So I'm going to go Fields over Russ, even though I do want to be on record. I do think that Russ is the starter here, but also this is long-term, right? So, I mean, Justin Fields being much younger, maybe you have a little bit more of a runway there with Fields. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for checking this out. I will remind you, one, I am very sick, so I apologize if I sound gross or if I'm drooling throughout this entire thing. Two, I'm going to be live streaming every single night. So if you want to hop in a fantasy football draft with us, it's going to be over there on Underdog on the Flock Fantasy YouTube channel. Find the link to Underdog Fantasy if you want to hop into best ball drafts this year. I have a ton of fun with them every single offseason. You can find it in the description, comment section, live chat, available in damn near every state. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250 on a new account. Plus, you're going to get access to our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. Plus, you're going to be getting hooked up with a special NBA pick'em, something like Luka Doncic more than less than half a total point, depending on whatever night that you sign up with code FLOCK and whatever game's going on that day. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. I really hope you have a great day and hope you get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.